So have you ever found yourself like literally thinking about things so much that it creates anxiety? It prevents you from doing anything because it's not quite perfect yet. You need a little bit more information, a little bit more knowledge. You need to know exactly what to say. And this process of overthinking is something that can go and spin in circles and circles. And I really didn't know that I was actually an overthinker early on. Not only in my business, but also with my relationships. Also, when it comes to my personal like career as a police sergeant for 20 years, and then even in like my own health and fitness, I would always overthink things. And I know Teresa likes to even say like, I actually have to plan to be spontaneous. Like my schedule has to say, Mark, I'm going to be spontaneous on this time because I need to know all of the details. And what I didn't know is number one is overthinking was something that was actually holding me back. But what I also didn't know is that I could use overthinking to actually work for me. I could make it actually become my superpower. And it's what I did to not only build a successful business, but to lose 100 pounds and to keep it off, to rise up the ranks of LAPD and be able to leave my career forever. And I was able to do that because I used this thing that used to be my kryptonite to make it be my superpower. Now, today, we have some really powerful guests that we're going to talk to in a minute who've also done the same. They have learned how to use some of the skills that we teach, that we talk about all the time around how to prevent overthinking and how to make it your superpower. So if you're ready to do that with us, you're ready to dive in and learn something new today and use this for you instead of against you, let's go.
It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
What's going on, everybody? What is going on? I have two more incredible humans who are here. These are powerful coaches, powerful one-on-one clients, and really powerful friends of mine who really have learned a lot about overthinking. And I'm going to bring it out today so that you guys can all see how we can use this as our superpower instead of our weakness. Now, I do have to say, I want to welcome everybody here to the live stream. If this is your first time ever being here, we are super pumped to have you on the team. I also want to say welcome back to all of our Inner Circle members. I just saw my sister signed up for the Inner Circle. Michelle, what's going on? Why not keep it in the family? Super pumped to have you guys all here. I'll talk to you guys about next weekend's workshop for just the specific Inner Circle. This is where we can dive deeper into a lot of the topics that we talk about here today, building a business you love, connecting with your family on a different level, and really keeping and making your physical and mental health a priority. And there's two people who are on the screen with me who do an exceptional job at that. And I want to intro them real quick. Give them a few seconds to basically tell you who they are, what they all are about, how they actually help people. And then we'll dive right into this idea of overthinking and what it means and how we can use this to be our superpower. So we'll start off with Elizabeth Kurtz. Elizabeth, how are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm good. Well, since I didn't get the memo about wearing green today during your intro, I popped up and got my like 1950s happy St. Patrick's Day.
Stop. How did you have that lying around to be able to pick up?
Well, fortunately, it just sits right behind me since I'm in my room. So,
okay.
So I got it. So yeah. So hi, I'm Elizabeth Kurtz. I'm a life and performance coach who works with high performing CEOs and company leadership. And I help them rewire their subconscious mind so that they can unleash their business brilliance while also safeguarding their personal harmony without getting burned out.
Love it. It sounds like a perfect harmony with our channel here. So love that you're here with us. Always super proud of all the things you've been doing. I know you have been, you're the type of person who likes to see things differently. You go out, you do things differently than most people would even like think about, where most people are on social media and you're like, how can I make a bigger impact in my community? And it's really awesome to see that you leaning into that, getting uncomfortable and then getting those Marco Polos from you like, oh my God, guess what happened today, right? I always love to get those back. So proud of you, friend. Excited to get you here and learn all the wisdom and stuff that you have. Cassie, what is going on, my friend? Want to do a quick intro for everybody to see who you are and where's your pin?
I don't need a pin. I'm wearing green.
Okay.
I was just laughing. Like, I would have had to dig through like drawers to find a green pen. Like Elizabeth's like, oh, here it is. So I'm a life and performance coach as well. And I'm also a registered nurse. I think I've lost count. I know I lost count, but I think it's been about 17 years. So my passion is helping my colleagues and more specifically new nurses come in. The 2020 changed healthcare forever, and new nurses don't really have that solid foundation anymore with other nurses who have been in the field for so long, because a lot of them left. So my passion now is helping new nurses come alive and find their confidence as they start navigating their new career.
I love that. I love that. I actually remember when we were on a one-on-one call, Cassie, and we were having that conversation, right? We were trying to figure out like who you're going to help. And I'm like, Cassie, if you, let's say, started out and you had a conversation with the old Cassie before she became a nurse and she just got into the career, would you be able to tell her a couple things that would be able to help her? And I remember you were like, yes, I would have so much that I could help them with. And I'm like, okay, it sounds like you found your person, right?
Oh yeah, that first year, if I would have had somebody like this, I probably wouldn't have had as many panic attacks. Absolutely.
100%. And I know we kind of talk about this, but like some of the people in that profession feel uncomfortable even asking the people that they should be willing to ask, because there's like a weird awkwardness. And it's the same in the police field. It's like the person who you're supposed to ask is not really the person that you want to ask, because you don't want to seem like you're stupid or you don't know what you're doing. But love you for doing that. Thank you very much for being a nurse just in and of itself. I know we owe so much to the NICU nurses that we had when Andrew was first born, and just nurses in general. I mean, you guys, what you guys do out there is so important. So thank you for that, friend. Thank you for both being here. Thank you guys for being here. So we're going to talk about this topic of overthinking, and we're going to like really pull out like some really valuable lessons as my puppy tries to get out of his cage right now. We're going to pull out some valuable lessons from all of you guys so we can share it really with the world. And there's so many amazing humans that are here. I see a lot of coaches that are here. Good morning, everybody. Super pumped to have you guys here. But I want to start off with just this idea of overthinking. I always like to, when I think about a specific topic or word, I actually like to Google it and like look at what this word actually means, because it helps give me an understanding of like, beginning with the end in mind, what we're trying to overcome and why it's so hard to actually get through this, right? So when you look up overthinking, it says to think too much about something, to put too much time into thinking about or analyzing something in a way that is more harmful than helpful. So you're thinking about it so much, because, thought is an important part of the process, right? Like we do have to think about things and think things through, but you're thinking about it so much that it's actually harmful more than it is helpful. And that's what we want to talk about here today. So I kind of want to start off with, and by the way, Teresa, how are you doing? Why haven't I let you talk?
Did you?
Yeah. There's so much wisdom that's over here. So let's talk about like why overthinking is so hard. And I want to start with you. I know I wasn't going to call you out, but I'm going to call you out because this is our show.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear like, what do you think in terms of why overthinking? Just why overthinking in general? Why is that so hard?
Well, I think because we try to convince ourselves that it's actually productive, right? Because we think, oh, I have to think of all of the possibilities, or I have to have all of the pieces. And it's like that perfectionism. So we do try to convince ourselves that overthinking is actually something productive that we're doing. And it really isn't, right? I mean, you can, find what works best by actually doing it rather than actually thinking about it, right? Like, how many things have we thought about? How many ideas have we had that we never like brought out to the world because we thought too much about it? And then we just tend to convince ourselves not to do it, right? So I think that's one of the main things where it seems like it's more productive than it really is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it feels like you're doing something, right?
Yeah.
But you're really not. You're just thinking about doing
Right.
something. And
Right.
thinking about doing something is different than doing something,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah.
100%. What do you guys think? Anything come up for you in terms of like, why do you think overthinking is so hard?
I
had
wrote
the
down.
same-
Well, yeah, sorry.
They both come on. They're like, I don't know if I have anything to share. And now they're both sharing at
No.
the same exact time. So Elizabeth, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I think overthinkers are analytical in nature and therefore natural perfectionists is what I had. So we're natural perfectionists and we have to get things right. And if we don't, we think that there is failure here. And typically, or, if we don't get it right, then we failed. And not all, and like that's a failure, but it collapses on top of an identity of I am a failure. So it just has this cascade of that happens, from overanalyzing.
100%. And then you continue to overanalyze that fact that you overanalyze. And then you just go down that rabbit hole of like, I have to find out why I'm overanalyzing.
Oh my
That's one of the
gosh,
things
yes,
that's
yes.
one of the things that like, coaching people who are like me, who are overthinkers. That's the first thing that I really call out to. I remember calling it out too. It's like, okay, we don't really need to get to the root of all of this because it's going to literally focus all of our time and attention on, like what Teresa said. It feels like it's productive if we get to like actually think about why we're doing this to ourselves. And like maybe like for the first like 20 minutes, but then after that, if we spend weeks and months in there, right, it continued to perpetuates the cycle. So I love
think
that.
we
Love
had
that.
multiple conversations about that at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
About
mean, I
getting
still
to
have
the
this
root.
conversation with my own head because it still happens to me. And I'm like, but now with the awareness, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. Okay. So let's think of a different way that I know that I can reframe this and get into taking action so that I'm not overthinking anymore. Right. Cassie, what do you got, friend?
Same thing that Teresa was saying, where it makes you feel like you're actually doing something.
Mm-hmm.
You feel productive in the moment as maybe you're writing down yet another list of like pros and cons and this and that and talking to like another person about it because maybe they have the right answer that you're looking for when really it's not.
100%.
It just
100%. I have 4 other things that I actually was doing some research on. I want to throw out to you guys real quick. And the reason why is because I feel like we all get affected by overthinking a little bit differently. And there's usually like a different pull that gets us to think that overthinking is actually productive in the moment, right? So we talked about like it seems to be productive. A second one is like it's kind of like a habit. In for some of us, it's just what we immediately go to. Like it's our some people call it detail oriented, which we'll get into that, like how that can actually be your superpower. But some people call it like that's just so many details, right? But what happens if you don't have those details, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Fear and anxiety if it goes wrong. Some people have this where they have to think about everything because if they think of everything, then they know when it comes up, like they can fix every single problem and they'll be able to fix it in advance, right? And so they can convince themselves to keep overthinking because then they're going to be prepared for if something goes wrong, which I can see to some extent, but like you've got to set a time frame on that before you do it, right? Another one is avoidance of underlying issues. So if you're like, but I don't really want to invite my business, but I don't really want to tell somebody to buy. But what if I keep thinking about what my Canva graphic should be like, right? What if I just redesign it? What if
I feel attacked.
What if I'm
feel
sorry. What if I change the logo on or what if I change the wording on my Instagram, right? It's like, well, you could do that or you could talk to some people, right? And so it's like one of those things where it's like buffering. Another one is difficulty in recognizing or stopping. So you don't even recognize you're doing it. It's just, that's a part of life. That's what you do, right? And so I think that like when it comes down to this, like one of the biggest things you guys are going to learn from today is like really how to recognize it, right? Because that's always step one. It's like instead of beating yourself up about it, going, oh, what was it that happened that I can go back to now and say, when this happens again next time, maybe it's already that I'm going down the path of overthinking. Maybe I can take some of those things and move them into the future so I don't overthink anymore. Or at least when I start to go down that path, I recognize it so I can make a different decision, right? Now, I do want to get in, we don't want to just talk about how hard it is, but we want to actually like help people get a hold of this. So to the panel here, why do you think it is so important to actually get a hold of overthinking?
I was afraid to start first because Elizabeth might have jumped in. So
No.
it's a recognition because it's preventing you from doing what you really want to do. For me, it's a horrible buffering activity. And it prevents me from doing the things that I really want to do. Sometimes it'll prevent me from doing a workout, going outside, working my business, all the things that I really enjoy. Instead, I'm over here dwelling on something that's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not as important as everything else.
Yeah, I love that. Are you reading my notes? Are you reading my notes? I totally agree. When I think about this, like I think about myself, I like to, try to figure out how it's going to be perfect before I put it out into the world. And it's like this process of overthinking actually prevents me from doing it and making it perfect, right? Because there's no amount of thinking that I could ever do will make it perfect. Because when I think about it in my head, it makes sense. And when I put it out into the world, it's like, that really doesn't make sense, right? And you find that thing by doing. So I agree with you. It's like one of the biggest reasons is because it gets us out of, when we stop overthinking, gets us out of our head and into our life, right? So we can start doing the things to make a change.
Yeah. And one thing that Cassie says, she mentioned buffering. So for those who don't know what buffering is, it's basically an activity that you do to avoid a feeling. So you'll find that sometimes we'll say buffering, but that's what we're really saying. It's like something that you do instead of what you need to do, or because you're trying to avoid that feeling of uncomfortableness, rejection, or whatever, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the ways that we can describe this is when there's like a hard feeling, like there's a difficult feeling that you don't necessarily want to deal with, where talking to somebody new, going and doing your workout, like whatever that is, your brain will convince you, well, you can do something else to feel a different way, right? We have people in our programs who, like, when it's time to actually sit down and do their work, to put together the workshop, have a conversation, make a sale, all of a sudden their house needs to get cleaned, or maybe their laundry needs to get done, or maybe the kids need to be watched. Like all those things that it makes it a little bit more easier for you to not feel the discomfort of doing that thing that you wanted to do, working out, whatever, having a conversation with a human. You will convince yourself to do something else because it makes you feel like you're productive. And a lot of times we can convince ourselves as overthinkers, like, oh, you know what? I have to do this because I have to be, good for my family. I have to be, doing this thing. Well, the laundry has to get done, right? It does, but probably not right then when it says it's business time, right? So that's a very, very key point. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, if I may add, I think what Cassie was saying, when we're buffering, what we're really doing is we're not making a decision. And at the end of the day, not making a decision is making a decision for people who have not heard that before. And so when we don't have to make a decision, we don't have to take any action. And so it's important to, get a hold of overthinking so that we can actually start being decisive with our choices and where we want to go with our life. And then, making a decision is actually taking the first step in order to move towards what we want.
I love that. And I want to go down that path. Elizabeth. That was a beautiful place to take it, because I want to find out, like, what do you guys do to make a decision? Now, while you're thinking about that, Elizabeth, I want to give you an example, because this used to happen to my son. It still happens to him to this day. Is we went to Whole Foods and we were like, hey, which donut do you want? And there was like the chocolate, and there was the vanilla, and there was like, butterscotch or something like that. And he gets his dad's overthinking. And he's like, I just don't know which one. I don't know. Like, what if I try this one and then the other one was better? Like, what happens if I pick the wrong one? And my daughter's like already grabbed it. She's ready to check out. It's halfway gone. And I'm like, buddy, we got to go. Like, come on. He's like, I can't decide, right? I can't choose which one, right? And he used to do this a lot, right? Where he thought if he picked one, he'd be losing out on the other one, right? That's how his brain kind of convinced him of like, you have to pick the perfect one right now, right? So I'm curious what you guys do when it comes to like making decisions. What are some strategies that you have in place or that you use on the times when you're like, hey, I do feel like I did a good job of making a decision?
I had something that happened this morning that this is one strategy that I use, is that like this morning, I've been sick for the last few days, so I have quite a few things that I need to catch up on. And so this morning I was taking care of those tasks, and there was one that I was like, oh, you like stopped me on my tracks. I was like, oh, I could take care of this now, but then in my head I was like, well, should I take care of it now? I actually have to look up the information where I need to take care of this now. Is that going to take a long time? I might not be able to find it. How much time do I have? Like, do you see this like spit of thoughts that start happening? So I caught myself in the moment, and I was like, okay, stop. I was like, and then this is where I kind of, so I become aware. I think that's step one, is kind of just becoming aware when this stuff happens. And I think that's a muscle that we have to grow. So I became aware of it. But then one of the strategies I use is like that. I don't know the term for it, but it's that quadrant that is important, urgent, not important, like that quadrant. And so I kind of put I put a task that I can't make a decision on within that quadrant. And so if it doesn't fall important and urgent, or urgent, not important, then I can table it for later if I need to. But I have the power of choice to make that decision of what I want to do at that time.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Elizabeth, and it's called the Eisenhower matrix.
Oh, is that okay? Eisenhower.
Yeah. So do you do that beforehand, or is it in the moment where you're like, okay, this is happening again, let me use this tool, or have you used it as like a preventative measure in the past?
With my new word this year, preparedness, I'm working towards getting ahead of that and doing it beforehand. But I actually find myself a lot of the times doing it in the moment, especially when I find myself in the middle of overthinking a decision.
Mm. I love that. I love it. I love that. Now, can I just bring up something for everybody? Did you hear how Elizabeth reframed what she was going to say? She said, I'm working towards. Did you hear her say that she's making a mistake or she's not using it or she's not doing a good job? I like, this is the power of like coaching, but understanding how your brain works. When you say that I'm working towards it, it means that you don't have to have it perfected, but you're going to be implementing this moving forward. And you're not using shame, guilt, or humiliation to hold yourself back or to try and convince yourself that you suck and you need to do this more often. She's like, I'm working towards it. Just feel that in your body, because when you do this, you're not going to be able to have, just flip the switch and all of a sudden you're just going to make overthinking just like the easiest thing on the planet, right? You are working towards getting it under control. And that gives you back that power. So I really wanted to call out to that, because Elizabeth does a great job of doing that. And that is like our words create worlds. And so when we say things out loud, we give those things power. Whatever we say out loud, it actually gives us power inside of our brain. And so if we focus on what's broken, wrong, or missing, the fact that this is happening, we will actually shame and guilt ourselves and not show up the way that we want to. But when we can reframe it slightly of like, I'm working towards it, it just really changes the game, right? Yeah. And also Teresa asked a really great question, because she asked her a question to bring some awareness to it, but also probably something that Elizabeth was thinking about of like, like maybe I could do that beforehand, right? Maybe that's something. And that's the beauty of life coaching, is being able to ask a question of like, when have you excelled at this? And like, how can we actually use this on a more consistent basis, right? Yeah. So I love that. I love it. Love it. Cassie, you have anything you want to add? It looked like you were going to say a couple things.
So when I start getting into the overthinking, of course I always talk to my husband. We all know in my little group that he's my heart voice, and he makes sure he helps me find out. And I think this is what's important to me, if it's really aligned with my goals. Like, you have all these to-do things you're thinking of, overthinking, but is it really pulling you towards something that you've always wanted to do, or is it pulling you away from that? So making sure deep down, is this something that's important to me when it comes to my values or not? Yeah. Family and service have always been part of those. So making sure those ones align.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you bring up a really, really key point here. And that is like, well, first off, Terry is her walking heart voice. And like, anytime Cassie brings me something, I'm like, what does Terry say about this? And she's like, oh, dang it. Because he's like always that, like looking for not only the solution, but also like he knows you more than anybody, right? And he knows what your potential is and what your purpose is and what you're here to do and your heart behind everything. And it's very easy to tap into that. But having somebody who can spot that, right? Maybe you're going to be somebody who needs that outside help, which is me personally, is like knowing that Teresa, I give her full permission to come and say, hey, you're doing that thing again. Like, can we just like have a little bit of spontaneous like time today? Can we not overthink every single thing that we have to do from the time that we get on vacation to the time we get back on the plane? And being able to have someone, whether it's a coach, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, that person who's willing to like be like, hey, I'm that person. I'm going to be able to help you. Like, give me permission to come out and to call you out when that happens, because it like empowers you to now take control over it. Because sometimes we don't even realize, right? We have the behind the scenes view of everything that's going on. And so we can like totally forget about like actually we're a part of that equation, and that we might be leading down the path of overthinking. And we just need somebody else to go, hey, like, let's kind of like get this all under wraps, right? I mean, I think that's a lot of what I do for other people, but also what other people do for me is making that awareness piece, right? Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I like that, because it gives a different perspective, because we can get in our heads a lot. I mean, we're literally talking about overthinking, which is always happening in our head. So having someone else to kind of point that out and kind of get us to get out of that cycle is always great.
Okay. So let's go into the next question, which is more like, how do we help other people get through this, right? So we're talking a lot about here, like how to kind of like become aware of when you do that, right? Which is a lot of reflecting back on it, right? Thinking about like, oh, how did I get into this? Like Elizabeth was saying, like sometimes it could be that you in the moment can realize it, and then you can come up with things. But I'm sure Elizabeth had these moments where in the beginning it wasn't. It was after the fact, and you're like, man, why did that go so awry, right? And we can do the thing using the Eisenhower matrix. For me, as my puppy tries to eat all of our stuff here, for me, it's like giving myself a container where I'm like, hey, I'm going to make a decision within this time frame. right? So I don't have 3 weeks to do this. I have 2 days to be able to decide this. I'm not going to make a decision right now, but I'm also not going to push it off, because like Elizabeth said, when you make no decision, you are making a decision. You're just making a decision not to do it, but you're not closing the loop in your brain. So it makes it even harder, right? But when we think about that, when we think about helping other people, I think this can also help us help ourselves, because oftentimes, like Terry to Cassie, we can often give other people advice that we need to hear ourselves. And so sometimes when we help other people, we actually see how we can help ourselves.
Right.
So that being said, what are some ways that you guys help some other people, some clients, some of your family, some of your friends from overthinking?
Oh, you want me to answer?
Oh yeah, I want you to answer.
Well, one of them is kind of giving them a challenge, because we did mention that this is a habit, right? So sometimes we need to tackle it as just any other habit where you challenge yourself to just do it. It's kind of like that Band-Aid. You rip the Band-Aid off. So when you find yourself overthinking, then you have something else that you know you can do to kind of snap you out of that like pattern. So I think challenges are really good with this. So, okay, example, like you set up some type of challenge where you're like, every time I find myself overthinking, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z instead, right? Immediately. So it's kind of like snapping you out of that, zone where you can do something else instead. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it brings up this like quote of one of my mentors. He said, 70% perfect is perfect. 100% perfect is failure. So it's one of those things where when you find yourself in that moment, you're like, nope, time to make a decision based off of the information that I have right now. What's the decision that I'm going to make? And I remember like in police work, what they used to say is like, people's lives depend on your decision, but you cannot wait all day to make the decision or somebody's not going to be alive, right? You have to have whatever information you have, which is 60 or 70% of the information, and make a decision. But you also have to not use that decision against you moving forward when you get new information that you didn't have at the time.
Yeah.
I feel like we do that a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I had known that, like I would have done this, and you get mad at yourself and you're like, well, you didn't have that. You didn't have that knowledge before you did it, but now you do, and you can actually use that to move backwards. So I like that idea for sure. What do you two think? Anything specific that you do to help clients get through it?
It's kind of like how you found out that Terry was my heart voice. Finding how they tick and is very crucial, because like how Elizabeth versus me is very different. So to try to figure out how to get them out of the cycle, I think is pretty unique to each and every person.
I think that's a really important point here, because you guys have been like clients and friends of mine for a while now, right? And so I know how each one of you tick. I know what helps you and what doesn't help you. And sometimes we can feel like if we're trying to help somebody, especially for a coach, that we have to help them the first time that we get on a coaching session. But I didn't know those things until I coached you guys enough to really understand it. Now I can see it, and I can call out to Elizabeth, or I can call out to Cassie when I hear those things. And it's a little bit more easier for me to do because I know those patterns, right? So finding someone who can help you get through these kind of like situations, and also like not only help you see that you're overthinking, but finding a different path, right? So when I think about like what I do, first thing is I want to bring awareness to it. So I want you guys to see how you're doing this, and how, if we continue in that cycle, what's going to happen, right? And so we can even think about this related to, like, if you continue doing this, what do you think? How do you think you're going to show up? What do you think this is going to manifest or create for you? This is why we use the push method a lot with our life coaches, right? But being able to see, like, if you keep doing this, what is it going to do for you? It gets a lot of people to potentially hit rock bottom now without actually having to wait until they hit rock bottom. They can think about it going, I don't want to do this, right? And so I always like coming back with asking a powerful question related to, okay, if we could paint a picture of what like this would look like, just paint a picture for me. What would you do right now, right? And you kind of like, you force them to go there in their brain first before they actually go outside, which is one of the superpowers. If you have a brain that overthinks, your power is also thinking. And so you can come up with the details in your brain, and most people can't do that. Not everybody can do that, but overthinkers can if we use it for our superpower. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I like to ask people questions like that, because then they can envision it. And then from there, we come from a place of like, you don't have to know everything to do, but if you did know, what would that be? And then you can get them to come up with some kind of conclusion. And then I throw in the performance stuff. Like a lot, you guys, heard it through all of the bios that we talk about, is that we're life and performance coaches, which means we don't just make you aware of it. We actually set a plan up so that you can actually go out and hit it, right? So, hey, how about if we check in next week? What is a way that you can do this so that you can have it completed this week, and know that when you do it, it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to gain so much knowledge when you have that information and you bring it back to me. And when you ask a question like that, now they're going to perform, they're going to take action, they're going to get out of their head and into their life, and they're going to come back with this beautiful thing where they're like, either I failed or I did it right. Right. And either way, it's like such a huge deal of moving forward. And it's these steps. I know I've talked a lot to you guys about this too, but people come to me for business advice all the time. They're like, I want to have $1 million business. I want to do this. I want to do that. Let's talk all about business. And can I just tell you, like, when it comes to especially overthinking, like getting that under control might be something that we do in your personal life first. And then just all of a sudden, things just start to fall in alignment. You start getting clients, things start to work out, right? And it's this process where sometimes there's something like that that's holding you back. And when you're able to, like, whether it's work with somebody, or get like really clear on what that looks like when you start to overthink and you untangle it, it's one of those things that gives you back in multiple areas, and not just business, but multiple areas in terms of where you take your brain to, which is pretty much everything that you do, right? So, so really, really great tips, guys. So let's go to this last part. And this last part is like, I talked about, like, in the beginning, how we could use our overthinking as our superpower instead of our kryptonite. So I'm curious from you guys, what do you think, what is a way that you could use this process of overthinking, help people reframe their mind in terms of how it could be their superpower instead of their kryptonite?
Sorry, I was thinking about this earlier because I was like, okay, how do I use this for myself? Because this was a really great question. And earlier I said, you know, we're typically analytical in nature. And I feel like analytical people are excellent, have excellent critical thinking skills.
Yep.
So we have all of the data. We typically have already analyzed all the data before, you know, we typically already do that. We just aren't making the decision. So that it really is our superpower. If we've already got the data analyzed, if we could just learn how to step into making the decision, then I think that will ultimately set us free. But our power is being able to analyze the data and using our critical thinking skills, which are typically at a higher level than most. And that critical thinking is like, whew, it's the best thing you can have, I think.
It is. It is. I mean, I know a lot of you guys connected with me through Josh, right? Through my mentor, where we created our life coach certification. The reason why he has me on the team is because there's certain things that I can do that he can't do. His brain is not wired that way. His brain is wired towards like visioning and thinking about like all the amazing things he wants to create in the future, but his brain doesn't go to what are the steps that takes me to get there. So for me, like, I jump in and I help cover those steps. And then it's a beautiful like synergy between both of us, because when you are the person who's an overthinker, you are really good at coaching. You're really good at seeing how the thoughts work because you know how they work. You literally are staying in your mind for so much. You're like, I've been in here so much. I've got like a PhD in thoughts, right? And so, but instead of like thinking about this related to yourself, when you think about like how you can actually help people because you are really good at thinking and critically thinking, it's so much easier to help other people, right? Because you don't have their behind the scenes view. And so you can really lean in and help a ton of people when you are able to use like this overthinking for you instead of against you. So I really, really love that a lot. How about you or Cassie? What do you guys got?
I think about I'm trying to remember how it was worded. I was trying to remember that, but it goes something like your next decision, your next step is the most important one. It keeps you kind of grounded in the now and actually making a decision and knowing like it's going to be okay. This next step you're going to take is important, and just start taking those steps.
I love it. I love it. Keeping it simple, right? Keeping it simple, because as a overthinker, we like to complicate it. Because if we can make it complicated, then we don't have to make a decision, right? But if we keep it simple,
harder to make that decision when it's 100%, more complicated.
100%. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more of my belief about it. It's like, I know I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to have all the answers now. And it's always about like, this is one giant experiment, right? And what do you do with experiments? You do stuff so that you can know the next step. So it's about reframing my mind to thinking, I'm not going to have everything. I can't possibly overthink every single step, have every single answer. It's just not possible. So it's about reframing my mind around that. And it's a process, right? Because like Mark said, you can't just like stop overthinking from one day to another. So it's that thought of, okay, I'm not going to have all the answers. The next best thing is just to do it. And then I'll start getting answers.
Well, I'm actually pulling up my affirmations right now because I have 2 affirmations. I didn't realize until you were saying that connect with overthinking that I tell myself. The first one is I take theory and I create plans of action, which allow others to finally achieve their goals. Because most people can't do that. They can't take, hey, this is the end goal. Like, what is it going to take in order to get there? But my brain immediately goes to, these are all the steps, which usually can be used against me. But other people don't have that. And I have that, and I can give them that ability. And the next one is I make hard things look easy and I make complicated things simple. Because when we're able to like really think about things, I forget who it was that says this. So it may have been Einstein, where he says like the people who know the thing the most are the ones who take the fewest words to describe it, because they know it so much that they can simplify it so much. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's so simple. Even a complex situation, they can make it into it very, very simply. And that's what we do, is we take complicated situations and we think it and we like eliminate stuff that we don't need to have and then add stuff. And then we can communicate that in a way where somebody who doesn't know those skills, like it doesn't have those skills, that is a beautiful gift that we get to give people when we're able to do that. So that's what I was kind of thinking about, like, as you were saying that. Some of the things that I also wrote down here is research. I wrote down research because Teresa knows this, but if we are looking for anything, all right, like what was it, a flat iron? So she's like, I want to have the best flat iron on the planet.
No, I didn't say that. I'm looking for a flat iron. You're like, I got to find the best one.
So
that's literally.
So I sit down and I'm like, okay, Mark, you got a day and a half to do this. I did research. I looked at everything. I looked at blogs. I looked at everything. And I'm like, okay, Teresa, here's the 2 of them. These 2 are the top ones that get the most rating. And don't look at the prices, but just tell me which one do you think would be best. And she's like, this one. And it's like the best flat iron ever. And so I do this with a lot of things. So
your superpower is to, because I saw it in the comments, are like, okay, I'm doing research, right? Yeah. Overthinking is like, I'm doing research. But for you, it's like, yeah, I'm doing research, but I do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Other people, it'll take months. For me, I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a new flat iron. And it's like, even if the flat iron is broken, I can't use it anymore, but I got to do my research and it'll take me months. Right. Yeah. So it's really recognizing that you can use it as a superpower, right? I can do research, but I can do it in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, 100%. And like what she was talking about right now really has a lot to do with the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Because the stories that we tell ourselves will either get us to spend all week and month and year making a decision, or have us make a decision in a decent amount of time, right? I mean, like when I used to do research, it would take me months and months, and then I would wait. And I'm like, well, what if it goes on sale after the day after I buy this? Hello, brain. Where do I keep going and going and going? What if a new one comes out after this, right? Yeah. And then I've like lost out on that entire month of being able to have that thing, right? But that's why I wrote my book, is like Mastering Your Life Through Self-Coaching, is being able to find the stories that got me to go, okay, I do need to take some time, but I need to make a decision, right? So thinking about that for you, I'm like, I want her to have the best tool that she possibly can have. Why? So it can really help, because I love you and I want to do everything I possibly can. And I'm never enough. Remember, that's my limiting belief. I want to do the best that I can. And so when I do that, I'm like, how can I do this in a way, but also quickly? Because I want her to be able to get it right now, because I know she's struggling with this other one that's a piece of crap that she can't actually. And it's funny, it's a flat iron, guys. That's what my brain does, because I'm an overthinker. But being able to find those stories of like, hey, I'm going to really help her, I just got to get this done within this next couple of days, helps me to show up and to take that action. So researching is, as long as you set a time frame for that researching it, that's one of our superpowers. And then brainstorming sessions. Like one of the things that Josh loves to have me on the calls, the team calls for, is because I can brainstorm a million different ideas. I can throw a question out there, and now that we have infinite number, because that's what he does. He's like, hey, we're thinking about, having the life coach certification at this place. And then I'm like, well, how about this? Or how about that? Or how about that? And now he's like brainstorming all of these ideas. And because he's not a details person, he's like, I didn't even think about that. Like, we could do that. We could have this. And if I wasn't there to be able to brainstorm those ideas, like, I don't think he would have been able to come up with all those, right? So it has a lot to do with like using this as your superpower, like we said, instead of your kryptonite, where you're doing it all the time. Instead, doing it for other people is easier, but doing it when you're doing it for yourself, setting some time frame so that you don't go into like complete overthinking mode. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to give everybody a chance to kind of like boil this down. All right. Because like we talked about in the beginning, sometimes when we're learning and we're talking about these things, there can feel like 72 million things that we need to do so that we can get this all worked out. It's going to be perfect. And once we get off this, we're never going to overthink again. And that is a part of our problem, is that, right? So I want to see if we can boil this down to like the most simplest thing. Like if you want somebody to take one thing, like if you want, you're like, this is just the one thing that I would love them to take away from the call today, what would it be? So let's see if everybody can chime in. What do you think? You're thinking? Are you overthinking?
Overthink it.
Overthinking?
I've got one.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So if I could boil it down, I think first of all, it's three parts. So the first one is awareness.
Mhm.
And like I said in the beginning, it's a muscle. I think we need to practice awareness and catch it whenever we can. And when we do catch it, we understand that we have the power of choice.
Mm.
And so you might be standing at a fork of the road. And so, but you have the power of choice. So once you make that choice, like you are therefore empowered to then make a decision of which direction you want to go. And there's no, like you say, one right, best only way, because you can always course correct and go the other way if you want, or a totally different path. But I think it's three parts: awareness, power of choice, and then empowering yourself to therefore make the decision of which direction to go.
I love it. I love it. And as you kind of like say that, one of the things that kind of comes up for me is I want to make sure I call out to it is that just because you make a choice does not mean that you're not going to feel some kind of like tug in the opposite direction. Like you're going to be like, oh, nope, everything's going to be going, because if you do that, I honestly believe that you overthought it. Like when you get to that point where you're like, okay, this seems like the best decision, this is the action I'm going to take, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a pull in the other direction, right? It still means that there was a decision to be made. So maybe you're not going to be like 1000% like sure on that thing, but you can't wait for that sure feeling of like, I'm 100% sure, because then you waited a little bit too long. Right. So, so if that is you and you're thinking about making that decision, know that it's not going to be like a complete night and day decision. Sometimes it might be, but sometimes it's going to be a tug between both of those. So I love that.
Yeah, like almost like a forgiveness or grace of yourself. Okay, maybe this, like you made the best decision you could with the information you had at that time.
100%.
So, and then if it wasn't the right decision, you also have the power to go in a different direction later on. Like there is no wrong decision or wrong direction.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I definitely tell myself is like, I give myself permission to change my mind.
Yes.
Like I do. I give myself permission to change my mind. Like I don't want to change it every single day because that would be a problem. But I say I give myself a permission to change my mind. If I try this for this many of months or this many weeks or whatever, and it doesn't work, I give myself permission to come back and analyze this, look at the numbers, because that's what my brain does, details. And then from there, make a decision, a different decision that's in alignment with that, right? How much more would we learn and grow if we did that? As opposed to just thinking about it and then just never doing it, right? And then talking yourself out of it versus actually doing it and failing it. Like how much more would we learn and how much more would we speed that up?
Yeah. And I think that's what I was going to say is kind of like fail forward, right? Getting into the habit of just doing the things rather than overthinking. So even making it fun. Like what can I do to like fall on my face today? You know, or, you know, life is messy, right? Let's just do messy action.
I like it. Cassie, what do you got?
Changing the story around it a lot too. Like how you just said, Mark, I forget how you phrase it, but that actually, like when you think about when you're in your head overthinking, you're in this anxiety mode, you're high stress. But when you're taking the action and you're actually learning as you go and doing the things, it can be fun and it relieves the stress of like, am I making the right or wrong choice? You don't know until you do it.
Yeah.
So awareness, like Elizabeth said, sometimes having that person in your corner to like help you course correct if need to.
Yep.
And when you take the actions, you will actually realize it is less stressful than living stuck in your head.
100%.
Yeah.
And Heather wrote a beautiful thing here. We're going to bring it up on the screen. She says, realizing that changing your mind doesn't mean you failed at making a decision. You just have more information and you learned what didn't work.
Yeah.
I learned what didn't work. I want to give you guys a different story here today. And that is like, how many times have you personally been through a struggle where you failed? And because you were going through that struggle, you found a new way to achieve that goal. And now you actually help other humans achieve that goal. Would it have been as impactful to you if you had not failed the first time? Would it have like been so much like, would you have been able to help more people if you hadn't gone through that yourself? So many of these things, like going through it yourself, like Ed Milet says, it makes you the perfect person to be able to help someone else through that, right? It makes you that person who now, because you're going through it or you've gone through it, you're now the person who can help so many other people through it. And if you hadn't gone through it and you're just like speculating or just, sharing what you think you would do, it's a little different than, hey, I've been through this and this is what didn't work and this is what did work, right? So many times we forget that the past has already taught us valuable lessons. A lot of times it's why we have our business. Yeah. And then we're like, but I don't want to mess up anymore. But I don't want to struggle anymore. And it's like, well, you're going to be a little bit upset because that's what business and life is all about. Mm-hmm. It's all about struggling, learning that thing, getting to the next level and helping a lot of people learn that thing too. Right. That's a part of the process, no matter how big and how far you get up.
Yeah. And it's the process of becoming an expert, right? How do you become an expert? You just do the things, right? And then you learn. Yep. And then, we are experts in a lot of different things. We don't recognize it all the time, but we've gone through so many things, so many challenges that we've overcome.
Yeah. 100%. Even just having this call, right? I'm like, Cassie and Elizabeth, I want you guys to come on as experts and talk about overthinking. And they're like, what? We're not experts. And I'm like, you are the best person to talk about this because you don't believe you're an expert, but I see you doing it all the time. I see you through the process of thinking of things, reframing them, tapping into your heart voice, struggling with it sometimes, which was what we all do, right? But being willing to lean in, get the coaching, get some help and reframe it. I'm like, you guys are the experts that I want to have in here. If you don't want me to call you that word, I'll call you something different. But in my mind, I'm like, you're the experts. Otherwise, I wouldn't put you on this platform. I wouldn't put you on here to get you to have these great conversations with everybody because I truly believe that you're the experts. But there's a lot of like weird verbiage or words like that make us feel weird, right? When we're seen as the expert. I remember going through my police career, they used to do this thing where you could be a court qualified gang expert. And we used to freak some of the police officers out because basically most people in court, when you're in court, you can't give your opinion. All you can state is the facts. But if you're an expert, you get to give your opinion. You can say, I believe this person's a gang member. You can't say whether or not they are, but you say, these are the reasons why. And the court can say, okay, I recognize that because you're an expert. But what they told me is they said, in order to be an expert, you just need to know 10% more than the regular public does. Think about that for a second. You just need to know 10% more than the regular public does. If you're a coach, do you think you know 10% more about how the brain works? Yeah. Do you think you know a little bit more about overthinking than what the regular public is? Because they're just stuck in their overthinking. They have no idea that their thoughts are actually creating this experience for them. And that makes all of you guys who are a coach, anybody who's on this call, anybody who even dove into this, you're an expert now. We're going to deem you an expert. And this gives you the greatest opportunity to not only use this for yourself, but also use it for others as well. Okay. Now here's what we're going to do. We always, at the end of every single call, we pull a card from our family deck here. But before we do, I want to get both Cassie and Elizabeth to share if somebody gets to the end of this and they would like to get some help, some of your guys' help, what is the best way to connect? So Cassie, you want to start, like, where's the best way that somebody can connect with you if they are looking for maybe some additional help or just to see what you're all about?
I am on both Facebook and Instagram. It's Cassie Riggs on both. On Instagram, it's backwards, so it's riggs.cassie.
Okay, and Cassie is CassieRiggs. Okay.
Correct.
Elizabeth.
So since I actually don't do a lot of social media stuff because I've been doing a lot of in-person items here in town. So you can still find me on social media on Facebook or Instagram at Elizabeth Kurz, and the last name is Kurz. There's no T or anything else in there. A lot of people like to put that in. Or you can email me. Email is best. I really love one-on-one sort of connection. So you can always email me at Elizabeth@kurzcoaching.com.
Okay, well, definitely send me both of those guys to, or send that to me so I can put it into the show notes. I thought you were going to say something like the Shark Tank CEO at whatever, because Elizabeth coaches people from Shark Tank. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, guys. Every week we come up with a question, and the question, we pull it from our center table here. It's a question that you can ask your family to really get to know and connect with people. This is the one for younger kids. And I really love this question. All right. And we're going to see if any of you guys want to answer this. But this is a question that you can ask your family, and I want to challenge everybody to do that today. It is like, when do you not feel respected? So when do you not feel respected? Now, here's the thing. This is the reason why I like these questions, is because it kind of can paint a picture of when you're doing or saying something, how it feels to the other person so that you can make a decision if you want to do something different, right?
Mhm.
So I know sometimes when people ask these questions, it's like, what if I say something and get them upset? But for me as a life coach, I'm like, I always want to know I can become better. And so asking these questions is like, when do you not feel respected? Will help me to make sure that I continue to respect that person, especially the ones that I love, right? So anybody want to answer that? When do you not feel respected? Okay,
I
I'll go
don't feel
first.
heard.
Okay. Cassie says when you don't feel heard.
I
So
was gonna say
give me
that
an
too.
example, Cassie, of like when you wouldn't feel heard. What would somebody be doing or saying that made you feel that way?
Not fully connecting.
Okay. Yeah, I for me, it is very similar to that. It is not asking me questions to actually find out what's really going on, and instead of jumping to conclusions and giving me like all of your answers, right? So I'm like, hey, I'm struggling with this, and then they just get into teaching as opposed to really getting to understand and know where I'm at. When somebody can ask me questions and I verbalize it out loud, then I feel so much more compelled to take their advice and get their help. But if I feel like they're like trying to take a cookie cutter answer and just give it to everyone, I feel like that's where we like make some mistakes. I mean, Elizabeth talked about it. Like there's not one right, best, only way. And I know on social media, sometimes we can be like, hey, this is the way. But in reality, like everybody's wired a little differently. So really getting to know that person and what it is that they want, what it is that they want to achieve, what are some of the things that are holding them back by asking questions definitely makes me feel respected. It's like they're not just trying to take some blanket thing and try and help me with it. And they give me the time and space to actually talk about it, right? It's not like let's get through this conversation as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that's how when I do not feel respected. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for me, is feeling heard, right? Because a lot of people will jump into, hey, I want to fix the problem. But many times it's just someone just wants to speak out loud of what's going on in their mind, and someone just be there to, just to listen, right? Sometimes even that, like it could be just silence, right? It could be just you being able to express yourself and express your thoughts and your feelings to someone else, so they're not just stuck in your brain. And then for someone else to be able to, say, hey, do you want me to give you some advice, or do you just want me to listen? I think that's one of the things that came out of you going through becoming a better father and husband, is some of like asking people for permission, right? Do you want me to help you fix this problem, or do you just want me to listen? And I think that's one of the most powerful questions that you can ask someone else.
Elizabeth, you got anything?
Well, I think it depends on the category. I might have a different answers. Like parenting, like woohoo, parenting right now, not feeling respected. We are going through that in this household. I think, gosh, I've got to go from I don't know, like a parenting or relationship sort of aspect, when it's, when I have to repeat myself numerous times, and it probably is something similar to not being heard, but it's just like, maybe just not I guess it's, not feeling respected if I have to like repeat myself, if I have to go through things all over again, like what we might go down a downward spiral on this.
No. I think this is a beautiful place, because here's the thing, like when you have a kid, let's say they're a toddler, right? And you have to tell them 10 times, right? We can have a story in our brain of like, didn't I tell you this 10 times? Or we could think, you know what? They're 3 years old. I probably had to be told things 100 different times. This is just a part of the process, right? Maybe what is a way that I can do this? Maybe I can like write it down on our whiteboard to help him remember, or something like that. I know you do that a lot, right? The kids would ask you all the time, like, what classes do I have today? And then she's just like, oh, hey, how about if I make you a calendar? And you never have to ask me that question again. And I'm like, that's awesome. Let's do that. Cause I don't want to be that person who gets asked that question a million times. Right. But yeah, it could just simply be that reframe, right? A simple reframe. But it does sound like everybody has the same kind of like answers. Just to be respected means to like be heard, be someone who's willing to like listen to you. And now one of the things that I always like to ask is like, how can we model that behavior for others? Right? Because the first step is like asking yourself, like, how do I feel not respected, right? What are some of those things? But then also, how can I model that behavior when it comes to me communicating, connecting with others, right? Because that's the greatest gift that we can give our kids, our clients, people that we come across on social media, is going, I know that I feel respected when somebody's listening to me. So how about if I go into listening mode rather than sharing all the details about my program, rather than sharing all the things that I can do and sharing instead going into learning mode, because that's how we know that connection really, really exists, is when people give you the time and the space to be able to do that, right? So that's like that next step. So, all right, guys, great job today. You too. You guys totally
Amazing
crushed
job.
it. And you crushed it too. You always crushed it. And then Kurt, you always crushed it behind the scenes. For everybody who is not a part of our inner circle, just to let you know, we have a exclusive program here for the inner circle, which means we every other week on YouTube, but it's a private session just for people who are part of the inner circle. What we're going to be talking about next week is really talking about like the sort of like the dealing with other people's opinions and how we can deal with other people's opinions when they have opinions of us or what we're doing or what we should be doing or how
Or
people
what we think people are.
respond or react, or the whole process of like, yeah, what is this person going to think if I were to do this? We're going to tackle that in great detail, just like we did overthinking today. But we're going to give you some steps so that you can avoid using other people's opinions, especially those that you wouldn't accept their opinion. Then why would you accept their criticism, right? And being able to like really tackle that. That is a part of a program called the Inner Circle. It's like $10 a month, where you get to actually have 2 calls a month that you get to get on and get your questions answered and us help you through that process. So definitely, if you're a part of the Inner Circle, join us next week. Bring all your questions. We appreciate you so much for making it here to the end. And just remember that this process of overthinking can really be your superpower if you're willing to lean in to do the difficult thing of being able to reframe it and tap into your heart voice, where you're like, you know what, this is a thing that maybe has held me back in the past, but what I can use it for is to make me even more powerful, to be the type of person that can make a bigger impact in the world. And when you do that, I truly believe that that's what leadership is all about. It's not about the times that are easy, that it comes to you first time, that you don't overthink. It's about the times that happens, but you do it anyway. You find a different way of making that thing happen, and going through that thing makes you the perfect person to be able to help someone else. So thank you guys so much for everything. My puppy needs to go out, or he's going to go pee right in the middle of the floor. Thank you for everything that you guys do out there, and we'll see you on next week's call. Bye, everybody.
Bye.